What is up, Dan? And sideways, you stunning individuals. It's another epi of Liga Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you guys for a jam-packed slate of games on a Friday. We're used to the LCK being in there. We're used to LEC on Monday, Tuesdays, but now we are blessed with a rare Friday doubleheader over in Europe as we get to that winner's bracket side. But it's a couple of 6 and 7 seeds against the top seeds, so it's just business as usual. Favorites dominating.
What is that? It's not what's going on in the LEC.
Ooh.
Oh, a little bit interesting. A bit of a wrinkle coming through to kickstart the weekend on a Friday. Yes, the LEC is in action, and don't forget the LCS also going to be in action today. And before that, we had the LCK kicking things off. So yes, plenty to get into. Let's dive right into it.
We start with one of these upsets with Movistar Koi matching up against Na'Vi, and what we're really learning here, at least still early in this playoff run, is best of ones are not a good way to gauge the strength of a squad. Who'd have thunk it? It's like we had 15 years of learning that wasn't the case, but Movistar Koi proving that they were basically going through scrims, it seems like, in these best of ones, because they absolutely leveled up on the day against Na'Vi. Their team fighting was impeccable. Jojo Pyun was pretty damn dominant in the laning phase, at least in game one, and easy MVP of the series is going over to Alvaro for insane rel engages in the first game and completely nullifying Mainter's Mega Gnar with some Lulu polymorphs in game two.
And I think quietly Alvaro has built himself up to be probably the scariest rel player that I think that you have in the LEC right now. There's just something hits different and a little bit extra bias thrown in there because of the games today, but something just hits different on the engages and the creativity on the angles that he wants to take in on that champion. I really do like that from him, and I think, again, unquestionably, got to recognize him as that MVP, as that key difference maker for Movistar Koi throughout this series. But that's not to say that everybody else wasn't popping off, wasn't having their strong days for Movistar Koi. I think you can also look at Supa, right? His partner in the bottom lane, having a lot of success throughout this series. And then, of course, our guy, Jojo Pyun, our Canadian in the mid lane, finding some good performances, as you said, throughout the laning phase in game one on the Azir. And you go to game two, solid as ever on the Anivia, not even needing to use the Anivia egg passive, my man. You're doing too much good work on the Anivia. I always say this when it's the Kog'Maw action going on. You gotta maximize the champion. You gotta utilize that passive a little bit, even if it means getting your hands and your KDA a little bit dirty.
Yeah, we need you flashing under turret more to get that egg at least pop. That's what obviously the coaching staff will be saying in the BOD review. But yeah, I mean, we had wombo combos, just front to back team fighting that was absolutely on point for Movistar Koi. And we're used to seeing Alvaro on these engaged champions, be the star of the squad. But seeing him do it on a Lulu is a fresh take, fresh angle, and can take them to the next level.
That was something else, and I think as well when you're looking through on, for this Movistar Koi team, I think, again, almost everything firing, almost everything being positive. I still look at Mirwin as somewhere where I think you do need to get an individual level up as far as just how lethal, that's how scary he can look and appear inside that lane against what will be the opponents later on in this LEC playoffs. I think that's still an avenue that I want to see or am paying attention to with Movistar Koi, but as well, the draft, the performance, everything throughout this series, very much so in favor of Movistar Koi. And as you said before it all, probably not the best indicators heading into it going off of the best of ones.
Now, that being said, we were feeling high about Na'Vi, and they were incredibly consistent across those, but feels like a bit of a disappointment on the day because a lot of people were hyping them up as like their favorite, most exciting team in terms of their playstyle to see, and completely outmatched. It's more so Koi leveling up on the day, and I think Na'Vi just not being ready for it.
I think it was Koi leveling up, and I think as well on that Na'Vi side, it was probably the difference between a best of one and a best of type of situation as you move further, needing more games, more requirement, more wins to lock out your opponent. just that type of focus, that type of energy, all those things to carry it over to move into the next game. I think that's where you saw some of those hiccups for Navi, where it isn't the same as what we saw from them as a product in the best of ones. I still think that there's room and time for them to rebound.
There's still time for Carmine Corp to rebound because as we're recording this, we have just started Game 2 action between them and G2. But Game 1 was a disaster from KC as they got completely destroyed by G2. Broken Blade, who has been a bit of a passenger princess in the round robin for G2. He was fully driving the car in this one. Individually on the Gwen, ended the game with a 7.7k gold lead. One player having a 7,000 gold lead, and he did 50%, 5-0, half of his team's damage in this game. I don't know if you'll see those numbers again this split.
The Turkish haircut coming on through from Gwen, just snip, 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 clipping on around, making sure it is Broken Blade and G2 getting that early edge in the series, which, as you said, mostly a little bit of a passenger princess throughout the way that things have played out this early season for G2. But no mistake in this one, driving the car, driving the engine. And it's, again, a pretty good thing to see for him individually and, of course, for G2. Even more so in that head-to-head matchup against Kana when you're looking on that other side for him. So I think that's where I'm extra excited and thrilled about seeing that from him for G2.
Yeah, and, people being heavily critical of Kana getting put on Scion duty in a game, and now in Game 2 he's following it up with a Galio on the top lane. These aren't the carry champions that we're accustomed to seeing Kana and KC thrive in on that top side.
It's more so just kind of seemingly taking what answers they assumed would be a power pick or utility pick for maybe G2, maybe for Broken Blade in that regard, but ignoring that plays against your strength or your comfort within that top side of Kana. It's one of those ones where you have to weigh out the pros and the cons. What are you taking away in this situation, but what are you also denying yourself at that same time? And that's the one where I would agree with the community on being suspect on these choices for Kana, because again, it's not necessarily that these are bad choices in general. They're just not the prime choices for Kana, and the value is in taking it away from G2. But when G2 performs the way that they do, that value doesn't exist.
Yeah, people are going to overreact. I've already seen them overreact after the first game with how badly G2 beat them. But, KC could still easily win this series. We've still seen them be the best team in EU through that first round. So we'll check in on how things go after the weekend. But for now, yeah, G2 very much coming out ahead. Also had those LCK matchups, as we talked about, a little DK versus DNS. And we again got to see a little bit of a Smash difference, because this series last year, I think you're talking about DNS coming away with the upset, but the Smash effect allows DK to survive some questionable moments from both Lucid and Career throughout this set.
Yes, I think that is absolutely a very comfortable, very soft, very generous way to describe that series, but it certainly gets to the highlight point, which is Smash and his performance and his difference making in this series for DK. I think you can unquestionably look and examine this under the lens of, well, replace it back to the old version with aiming, and you could see it faltering. You could see it collapsing and being crucially costly mistakes from Lucid and Career, as you mentioned out. That didn't happen because Smash is able to come through. And I will also ease up on Career a little bit, because there was maybe a bit of an adjustment that said, well, what if we change your mentality completely and throw you on an enchanter, someone that isn't supposed to be anywhere near where some of the decisions that we've seen from you before? And to the credit, it worked out, because he did play that role fantastically, and he was setting Smash up and the rest of the squad. I think that was a good change in identity for this DK team today.
Yeah, and the Aphelios game especially, that Lulu Enchanter out of Career, and the two biggest team fights, he survives with 30 health, and he's 1 pixel away from face-taking a Sejuani ulti. And those two, literally down to the pixel moments, were basically the difference in this whole game, as one of those fights he does 15,000 damage in a single team fight.
pretty good. Pretty darn good. And we see exactly why he was this player that had been talked up to this type of degree. The potential was there and everything else that we knew. Just needed the right opportunity, the right spot to get a chance. And I think this one with DK has been such so far. That doesn't mean that you're done the journey, that this is it, and all of a sudden wrap it up, put your feet up, because it's the real deal. It's T1, and not just T1, this is lower bracket T1. And Smash should have some knowledge, intimate knowledge, from being involved in the organization, that there is a drastic difference between T1 at any other point of any other time and a T1 that realizes their back is against the wall. This is it, do or die chances. It's a very different story.
Yeah, it's like starting the boss in phase 2, right? They already have the mecha armor on for T1 when they're already in the lower bracket. They just thrive when they're like, oh, we have to win now? Okay, before it was just for fun against BNK. We didn't really care, of course, right?
Yeah, now it's the real deal. And you throw in on both sides of this equation that extra motivation of the Smash question, right? About Smash going against his former team and everything that entails and how that played out.
Just having a bad series.
Yeah, Pays, again, coming off of that poor performance, and never mind just being that guy that steps in and Smash, having those connections, all of that is going to come to the surface and going to be one of the main talking points about this one, win or lose for either of these sides. So very much so, that has got to be one of the storylines that you circle heading into this matchup.
And we'd be remiss if we didn't give a shout out to the DN Soopers, because despite being eliminated heading home, nobody was expecting them to get this far in the very first split with a pretty newly revamped roster and kind of consensus been the worst team in the league for the better part of 2 years.
Yeah, and especially kind of a bit of a boost for them going off of, what we've seen in the last, week and a half or so, or really just week, in comparison to what your runway, what your track record, what your report card said from the early part of this LCK Cup. So absolutely a bit of a level up for the DN Soopers, and still one what you do got to give that credit over to them. And I think enough positive seen from them, enough glimpses of what you can be as a solid squad, that you can envision them being one of these teams that, again, can continue to climb, continue to improve, and continue to challenge within that next tier below in the LCK.
Excited for them to enter that gatekeeper status of, are you contender, playoff team, kind of that middle ground that we so often see in the LCK. But yeah, Gen G, BNK, D+, T1, going to be some absolute bangers in the LCK over the weekend. But that is it today for League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you. Gorgeous individuals. Thanks so much for the support and hanging out as always. We'll catch you on that flippity flip.